This morning, I'm coming to you live from Arizona, where election conspiracists are running for almost every elected position: U.S. Senator, Governor, State Attorney General, and Secretary of State, which directly oversees its elections. On top of that, according to research from the States Project, which is a left-leaning group that tracks state legislative races in battleground states, election deniers make up 87% of all Republican nominees in Arizona state legislative races. Saving our democracy is a major issue for millions of Americans this cycle, but it's not the only factor for them. To learn more about what's driving Arizonans to the polls, earlier this week I traveled to the Rustler's Roost restaurant here in Phoenix, where I was joined by 3 registered Democrats and 3 registered Republicans. Here's what they told me about what is driving them to the polls this year.
Right now, outside of racial justice, I think one of the things that is should be of utmost concern is the threat against abortion rights, and how it's been politicized by by heavy conservative political bodies. And really, at the end of the day, this impacts people down to their ability to live, their ability to exercise agency over their own bodies. And right now, that should be something that should be a cause of alarm, a reason for people to feel compelled to vote. And it's one of the things that we need to tackle as a community and approach from an inclusive mindset, because there are millions of people who would be impacted by this nationwide. And this is something that should not be a political tool, but should be recognized as a life or death issue.
So yes, reproductive rights for the Ciudad Patli Collective, the organization that I represent and am a part of. It's a large part of our work is birth work related, and so it is improper to call this just an abortion issue. This is a reproductive rights issue all the way from pregnancy to postpartum. An example, right? If a woman or if a birthing person miscarries, if a physician or a nurse is going to be penalized for helping them carry through the miscarriage so that their body is okay and intact, that's a problem, and that's why I say it goes to safety. And it's sad that my decision is like, who is going to be the less dangerous person, right? Mm-hmm. Who do I believe is going to listen a little bit? Who do I think is going to undo less of the work that my organization is trying so hard to do? Like, who's going to make my job harder every day? That's my deciding factor to not vote for them.
The most important issue in Arizona, when I'm voting, is protecting the essence of our democracy. We're, for worse, ground zero of this election denier stuff, the fraud, the audit that they did with the ballot in the 2020 elections. When I'm deciding who to vote for, it's a disqualifier if the person isn't 100% honest of the fact that we had an open, honest, fair, and free election.
Right. And you're speaking as a Republican.
I'm speaking yes, I'm technically a registered Republican, and I am a Republican, and I'm also a father. I have 4 little kids, 8 and under, and it upsets me to no end that when I'm watching the news with them and they're hearing about these cyber ninjas doing an audit, county supervisors, county recorders getting threats, people at ballot boxes with machine guns or whatever they have, intimidating voters. They don't know what it was like 4 years, 8 years, 12 years ago, because they're little. And so this is the world that my kids are growing up in, and it's very upsetting because that is not the world that I grew up in, and it's not what I was handed. So for me, the biggest issue is that I'm not voting for anybody who questions, even if they're dancing around it. Because there's some folks who don't want to come out and say, oh yeah, the election was free.
They're playing footsie.
They are.
With these...
They're talking out of both sides of their mouth. Yeah. And I think that's why in Arizona, I think our most important race is the Secretary of State's race. Because they oversee
elections.
I think that what is driving me is really the protection of the delicate nature of democracy, right? And when we have people who are knowingly undermining by saying that elections were fraudulent, and there's not facts, when there's not facts, data, or science that prove that there is fraudulence, then it's just gross negligence and even cruel to be leading the populace to think that there was fraudulent elections. That undermines democracy. We already have problems with people accessing the ballot box and participating in the process. So to knowingly add to that is just egregious to me. That's number one. Number two would be the politics of division. And right now, and listen, both sides do it. Both sides do it. But the politics of division right now from many Republican candidates is the demonization of the other.
Yes.
And I can't be a part of that. To demonize that then motivates me to say, you know what, I can look past party affiliation, past party platform, and vote for individuals who I think will be bridges to bringing us together, and at least not the division and politics of hate.
And that is motivating you. You are also a Republican.
I'm a Republican for the moment.
I think what's motivating me right now, especially with going to the election and going, voting. This is my first midterm election.
Wow.
And
Right.
the big thing that I didn't think would have to be an issue is misinformation and denying something that is so simple and basic. At the end of the day, I am what most people target as. I am what is constantly being harmed. I am a queer person with a uterus, and it's like I'm of color, and it's just constantly my rights are being pushed away. This isn't my land. No. It is for somebody from California to move in here and make their new company. Oh, my body, it isn't mine. It's somebody 100,000 miles away from me making that decision because they believe that this clump of cells has, full autonomy and better than me. It's the fact that I could lose Obergefell versus Hodgins and my right to get married goes away because did you know it's my choice? I didn't realize that. I was kind of born this way. And the battle against misinformation is constantly being targeted towards people in the working class. Those are the people that I talk to every day. And we are just being targeted so frequently, like if we are going to be easily manipulated. Whether we one side or the other, that's what's constantly pushing me to go out and fight. It's not a matter of left, right. It's a matter of right versus wrong and what is factual and what is not.